Welcome to Talking in Stations. It's Matterall with Ash Dorothy. How you doing, Ash?
Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ash Dorothy, and I'm having a good time. How about yourself?
Really good. Well, there's a lot going on in EVE Online now. We're going to take you through some stories, little ones, but we're going to pick it up where we left off yesterday with Test actually giving their State of the Alliance, or it wasn't a State of the Alliance as much as an update on the war. So we'll listen to ProGod first, and then Villy taking some Q&A. But before we get into that, there's a couple interesting things. One is let me turn on my screen here. Well, actually, before we start, let's talk about a different game, not EVE Online, but a game that you and I are both highly interested in. Cyberpunk 2077. What's going on with that?
Oh boy. Okay, so to give a little backstory to this context to this conversation, you asked me the day that Cyberpunk came out, because I actually had a very nice friend and viewer of my show gifted me a copy of Cyberpunk 2077, so that way I could stream it if I wanted to, and I was totally ready to. So you asked me whether I thought it would be a good choice for you to get, and I was kind of wishy-washy even from the very beginning, and so now I have an answer for you. And holy crap, have you paid any attention whatsoever to the to what has happened with like the news about this, or should I start from the very beginning?
A little bit, but start at the beginning. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, the first things first. There's a company called CD Projekt Red, which is mostly known for Witcher 3 as their most recent like big name topic. And then in I think 2013, they announced that they were going to make a game off of the old 80s pen and paper game called Cyberpunk. And so that game had two previous editions. One was set in 2013, one was set in 2020. Obviously, 2013 was when it was announced. 2020 was way too close, so they set it in 2077. So Cyberpunk 2077 was first announced then. So 7 years of development later, it has finally come out, and it is pretty good, but it is actually hard to fully appreciate what it is because it is very buggy. And full disclaimer, I have the PC version of this, and this is important as you'll find out. So I have a PC version of it, and I have a pretty okay, computer as far as things go, so I can set things up. I'm not trying to ray trace or anything like that, but like I can run it pretty good, and like I have the CPU to run the AI and all that stuff. And I still run into like at least immersion breaking bugs, if not game breaking bugs, at least several times in just a handful of minutes.
Wow.
It's actually a difficult, and like all like fully immersive sandbox, or sandbox games have little bugs here and there. Physics goes wonky, or AI doesn't behave the way a human does. But this is crazy. And as like people began to dug into it, they realized that like there's smoke and mirrors everywhere. First of all, they had to actually release a legitimate apology because the original PlayStation 4, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, they released it for those as well, and those are so bad, like in comparison to the PC version, that like I've seen videos of it. It is just completely unplayable, like just blurry textures everywhere, like everything's bugged out, people bouncing around everywhere. It is just nonsense. It is a non-product. And so they announced they put out this like formal apology and this like commitment to launching a series of patches leading through February to fix the problem. But yeah, like it is banana sauce as it stands right now. But like it, so they release this game. It breaks all of the concurrency records for like single player games. It shatters all of the records on Steam. So it's like this huge game. They said that they paid for the whole thing just on pre-orders, right? All of the production, all of the marketing, everything was paid for just on pre-orders.
How big was the production for this thing, to get an idea?
Oh man, well I don't actually have like the full numbers. I did hear that there was like this several $1 million investment by their actual like their government. I think it's Polish.
Yeah,
might have been. Yeah, to develop this AI, which is basically, which is sort of funny given the fact that one of the things that they discovered is that there's like very little actual AI in the game. Like nothing, like the crowds don't actually behave like individual, like there's no chase mechanics. The police don't chase you.
Mhm.
You can actually turn away from a car and turn back, and there'll be a totally different car. Um, like there's there's no AI there at all. It's just a simulation. There's cars on tracks. There's people on tracks, and they react to like the moment, but like by like shrieking and bowing their head down or whatever. Like there's no actual AI there. But what the AI that they did develop was supposedly to make it so that they like the speech, like they
Yeah.
can put in the speech in there with little tags, and it'll make it so that the facial expressions do it correctly.
Oh.
Which is also funny given the fact that one of the bugs that happens a lot is that just doesn't work, and therefore the person's talking and the face is just like totally deadpan the entire time. So
Misalignment.
yay.
Wow.
So yeah, like one of the biggest, most anticipated games of like whatever. And then today they announced, or there was like 20% market drop, like their stock or whatever, like their company lost 20% value.
These guys are known for what? What is their game before this?
Like I said, Witcher 3. So they are known for like these open world, like obviously
The
that's a
whole Witcher
fantasy
series,
environment.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So these ideas like complex storylines and quests and narrative design. And so really the problem isn't just what the product is, it's what they sold it as. They sold that the Xbox 4 and the Xbox One and the PS4 would work just as good. And they explicitly didn't show it to anyone. And they even say like they apologize for not showing it. Like it's like
Oh, I read that
we're
part.
sorry for lying. Like literally it's like we're sorry that we lied. And like we suggest that you try to get a refund if you don't want to wait for it to give us time to try to fix it. It is definitely not what you want when you're rolling out your company's 7-year project.
Yeah.
But they've said that they're going to commit to whatever it takes to fix it, which reminds like No Man's Sky is another one of those examples that was nowhere near what it was supposed to be when it was released. But you know what? The problem is that game development is expensive, and development takes time and effort, and no one appreciates that, even people that are doing it. So
Yeah.
games are worth more than like $60. People sell 1 million copies of the game and still go bankrupt. So
Wow.
we got to understand that games, especially the games at the scale that we're asking for, take a lot of time. So hopefully they'll put in the time and effort to build it up. But right now it's pretty rough.
So off to a rocky start.
But at the same time, it's fun to play.
Yeah,
Like
I've
I
talked to
still
some
drive
people.
around in it and have fun. Like
Yeah.
it's super fun to play. It's just really frustrating because you know what it could be.
I was just watching. There's guys every day that come into TIS and they turn on their video while they play the game, and they play it together, and it's really hilarious. And they seem to be having a really great time. But I saw one guy, I was watching his screen, and he was stuck in traffic. I was like, "Wow, you're playing a video game to get stuck in traffic." That was something. But I think that the consoles, last generation consoles, seem to be the ones having the problem. So that would be a PS4 and I don't know what the last Xbox was, but the PC versions seem to be okay, and the online versions. If you don't have a computer that's strong enough to play this game, you can use GeForce Now or you can use Stadia. The problem with the Stadia that I've seen is that the world doesn't seem as populated because they have a lesser populated setting. So instead of like
Right.
30 people, you'll see like 12.
Right.
It makes a difference for your immersion.
So as I said, it isn't like the population isn't individually simulated. So it's just kind of like a general amount of them. Now, like you can see each one of them individually, and it feels individual. Like it feels okay. You can get immersed in it. But like ultimately, if you think about how it's simulated, it's just like simulated crowd based on what you're dealing with. And so they can just turn it down. Like you can actually turn it down, and you see a bunch of the crowd members just fade away immediately, and you're like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah. I like a more populated city. If you're going to have like a urban center, it should feel urban.
That being said, I have a couple of points to people that have somewhat enjoyed it, but maybe not as much as they would like. if you turn off chromatic aberration and film grain, that significantly improves. Like if it just doesn't feel like you can't grab it quite enough, or even and also motion blur. If you do those three things, the game will look a lot more crisp. And then also, if I think of another one, I'll let you know. I think there's one more. Oh, there is a Cascade Shadows Resolution. So like your main shadows you want those to look good, because if those get blurry or weird, then those are very noticeable. But like the shadows that cast on a secondary object, often you can turn that at least from high to medium and get a huge frame rate bonus. Probably the single biggest frame rate bonus that you can get out of all of those settings.
Wild. Well, I don't know. That sounds really interesting. What I find interesting is they made so much money on this game on pre-orders, and their stock still fell. That just seems to be like a contradiction. But
well, because the stock was assuming that this was going to go really well and go into DLC. Like now, there's concern because these products. This isn't just a product. This is a franchise. Right. This is whether or not we get Cyberpunk 2077 2 or Cyberpunk 2077 the MMO or DLCs or whatever. Right. Like this is people, whether or not this company is seen as a quality software development company. As they said in in their press or their thing today, this literally damaged the company's reputation. So at this point, they either fix their reputation or they just let it be damaged.
Wild. High stakes. See, CCP isn't the only one dealing with these kinds of things.
Yeah, I figure we all enjoy a good dumpster fire. I figure every once in a while we'd enjoy one that isn't ours. So
I'm still interested in it because of the genre, of course, and the ambition of the thing. It's a massive metropolis, and
it's a great game.
Open world, yeah.
It really did. Like I did play one of those 80s pen and paper RPGs, right? Like that's what I grew up with. So like getting back into that mindset, I just have a ball just running around with the game, exploring the city, finding what cool stuff is out there. And my biggest concern is that like I haven't cheesed anything, and I haven't really like. Also, there's kind of a bug at least I believe it's a bug that's making it so I can't progress very far in the main storyline, even though it's mostly you can do side stuff. But I've sort of lost sight of where I'm supposed to be. So like everything's skull difficulty, so everything kills me in one shot. So I enjoy running around the city, but I'll get back to you when I figure out what I'm supposed to be doing.
All right. Awesome. Thanks for giving me the update there. We'll check in on that a little bit later, but let's get to EVE Online, the game that we know. And here's a little happy anniversary to Titans. They are 15 years old today. That's right, 15 years ago on the 15th. Let me double check my dates. Yep, that's today. They were in the Red Moon Rising expansion. I'll have a look at that. I believe that is here. And you can see 39 new ships, including Titans, carriers, motherships, and fighters, all in one expansion. These expansions used to be massive. They were every 6 months, too. 6 months to a year.
Right.
But more than that, look at this. You have drones, weapons and drones, modules, skills, and implants. And remember, this when the game was just getting going. Dead space complexes and missions came into effect. This is when all that stuff was born. I love this. New player experience. They were already working on it way back then. This came out in 2005. And here.
It's really funny to go back to these really old patch notes and like go back to those things and see the things that like we've come to take for just being always part of it, being fundamental, and to think about it as being a patch note.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
things like the grouping of guns or having a market that's player driven. Like these things were patch notes at one point.
Yeah, I mean, look at this.
Grouping guns and player-driven market were patch notes.
I don't know if the markets were, but
well, most of the market stuff was NPC. Like they opened it up to the like all but non-commodity, whatever.
Yeah. Well, look at this. I mean, you can see here, security level 4 allows you to put a tower in high sec. Remember all this stuff? Look, set a password. I mean, this is all fundamental.
Yeah, that's when they put in POSes.
Yeah.
Because Red Moon's Rising is the rise of pre-Dominion Soft, effectively, right?
I don't know. I think the Sob system. This was the third
I,
expansion. The first one was
I thought
Exodus.
that this was, I thought that this was the red moon that was being risen, and that's why, because posses were always like intrinsically twined to.
They were. I
I don't
don't
know.
know. I don't know if that came after this or before, or it couldn't have come before. You're right. I don't know. I'm not sure. This was before I was playing the game. 2005. I was just hearing about it. But here, marketing and manufacturing. This is just amazing to see all the stuff that would go into one patch. So, and the thing is, they'd have such a celebration about these expansions because they'd have a fan fest, and that's when this stuff would be launched. And they would just seriously just celebrate the hell out of the launch with videos and stuff like that. We'll take a look real quick at Red Moon Rising. A look back 15 years ago at what the introduction of. I'll play without music. The introduction of Titans and stuff was like. Well, this actually is. It's called No Other Destiny, and it had like a what do you call it? Some people called it like jungle. Some people call it drum and bass, but it had a really hard driven bass music to it and stuff. I'm leaving it off in case like it's a problem with YouTube. But they're showing you here the Archon, the carrier, as it's being debuted. You know, this is like the first time people would have been seeing a carrier and been like, oh boy, I want one of those. Look at that. Here's a Hell. Yeah. So, well, drum and bass and jungle, I know that kind of music as different. See, they introduce it, and then you can see the POS there. Let me skip ahead.
Oh,
here.
I see. No, this is not when they introduced sovereignty, but this is when this sovereignty structure, i.e., starbases, was now deployable in HiSec, much like HiSec POCOs eventually happened.
Right. I think Exodus might have been the expansion before this. So this is like the third expansion, or I want to say fourth expansion. But look at these Titans as they are born 15 years ago today.
This one says, the blood moon of war is waxing as the technological advances of alliances rival those of the empires. New implements of destruction force battle lines to be redrawn. Research, manufacturing, and resource gathering have advanced to keep up with the appetites of war. Alliances are bending the empires to their will with the encroachment of starbases into what previous secure space, and pilots are taking protections of themselves and their assets into their own hands. This is not an easy fight. As factions turn their weapons of war against the alliances, corporations, and pilots of Eve, the Red Moon is rising. Death follows in its path.
Yeah, you saw the Doomsday there coming from the Leviathan. All the stuff, and then there's the end. So, happy birthday, Titans. I liked you when you were younger. Not so much.
Oof.
Now. Yeah, not so much now. There's too many of you.
Dime a dozen these days.
Yeah. All right, we're going to come back to test their update and Q&A. Let's just do a little bit of news before we get to that. So in other news, looks like Lake of Tears, I think they're gankers, right, by that title, did some killing. They got 12 billion worth of... Hey, I paid Patreon. We'll figure that out. And... yeah, so they took out a couple of haulers. I think one was NPC and another one was not. A total of 12 billion. So ganking alive and well. This happened in Ojai Devoid. So watch your back.
Oh, ganking is very much alive and well, and so are people that think that they're immune to them. So, I mean, these guys at least have ships that look like they might have been trying to set up for what they're hauling. But I mean, if you're hauling 6 billion ISK, especially that's the, well, I guess that's the cloaky one. The thing about tornadoes are there are people that just sit there and they'll pop one of those cloaky haulers if they see them. It doesn't matter. They're not even going to scan it because they can't scan it. Yeah. So they're just going to pop it and see what's inside.
All right. This, I'm not sure this got settled, but I'm going to open it up anyway. This is a forum thread, and it's about the character creator. Now, here's the thing. Somebody says, this is awful. And they're showing this new character creator. I'm not sure this is new. Do you know?
Well, so basically what I believe is happening here is that CCP A/B tests their new player experiences, which is also why you see a bunch of people saying I don't see that and I see that or whatever. So they're testing different types of new player experiences. And what you're seeing here is that they're stripping away focus from the things that ultimately don't matter that much to the person, like their bloodline. Like a person can like mentally decide what bloodline they are later if that's what's going to matter to them. So this ultimately streamlines things to, like, and allows you to kind of customize your character however you want it to be, which is more towards that idea of like allowing the character creation process to be more of a portrait and allow you to kind of connect yourself and start thinking about your character in this universe, more than the nitty gritties that it once was. And there are some people that feel that a lot of like nuance was stripped away from it, and other people were pointing out that some things were just wrong. Like here, like you have a clearly Amarian kind of
Character face.
character face and structure listed as a Mimitar. Now, it was
In
once upon a time that
in
there
a
were
Galente jacket too.
in a Galente jacket, and there used to be strict restrictions to these things, and then actually a long time ago they actually opened up those restrictions, and people really celebrated it because they wanted to be able to be their characters however they wanted to be. But it always kind of defaulted to very like Mimitar defaulted to very Mimitar-y kind of people. You could sculpt it to be somebody else if you wanted to be, and you could use those clothes, I think, if you wanted to now. But now it feels like some of the nuance has just been lost completely. Not that people can reject it if they want to, but it's just not there even if you wanted it. And that's caused several people, including some people that I know that are pretty prominent or that I saw in that thread. So that to not be very happy with it. So I think that they're continuing to develop their MPE. One of the things that's important to note, this was surprising to me, and most people don't really realize. So I talked to CCP Burger about this, and I was like, why don't we put like the character modeling and decision process at the end of the MPE, right? Like teach them what to do, get them invested in what's going on, let them understand what the different races are, and then let them decide what they really are. Like make them turn to a mirror and be like, and you are this, right? Like up until this point, you've been pretty generic. And he said that they actually did do testing on this, with removing the character sculpting process or putting it after the in-game MPE. And what he saw was a dramatic drop-off in player retention. That the act of going through the character creation process is just kind of what players expect. It's like wading into a warm pool, right? Like the jarring result of just like, and wake up in your ship. Like you could work with that if you did, but obviously at the time that they didn't. And so the act of going through the character creation process they see it as being essential, even if they don't feel like it actually like holds on to something later on, and they actually causes long-term design concern because now people want to be invested in their avatar, but they can't be. So yeah, but it's one of those things that you can't get rid of it. It causes a 70% dramatic drop off in retention to not have it.
Yeah. I think one of the issues that came up, I forget where, probably through CSM to CCP, or maybe CCP announced this, that a lot of people would take a long time crafting the look of a character and thinking about how they wanted to exist in this world. And then that character, it turns out, was like none of that came to matter pretty quickly after you were born into the game.
Right. It's basically a portrait creator. But there has been continued work, and there is reason to believe that CCP, like even stuff like this, shows that they're continuing to work on this avatar thing. Like if it was literally just a portrait generator, you'd think that they would just like package it up and never touch it again effectively. Like it works. Don't worry about it. Like maybe new backgrounds. But that's not what they're doing. They're kind of reworking it completely. And they've also done like a bunch of animation stuff for their scope videos, including facial animations and such. So like the idea, and they've shown pictures of like seeing like the hologram of whoever it is that's giving you the mission or talking to you, to give you a little bit more like context and feel more involved in things. So like we can't rule that out. And adding in voice for Aura also shows kind of this continued desire to make Eve kind of pull you in a little bit more and softer.
Right. And we had always hoped, you and I think we talked about this many times, is that instead of opening up the world and letting people have whatever they wanted, is that you would incorporate their actual heredity or whatever into some initial starting things. And I don't know if they did that. Like, remember we were talking about the new player experience leading into faction war, and it was just a natural progression to get you involved in space struggle. But with the flavoring that was empire based. But
yeah,
I think they probably are going the other way, saying, nope, let's make a casual game, not a sim game, and let's just let them have as many choices as they want.
Well, hear me out. So if they get satisfied with the MPE, one of the problems with the MPE is that they always stop at the career agents. They never reimagine the career agents. And so like if you think about the idea that like Aura leads you through the basics of instructions, that's fine. And this goes back to what I've suggested for over a year. My number one recommendation for EVE Online is to replace the agency in the EVE Online with Aura. And then put all of the show info information, like basically all information about things in the game. If you right-click show info on something, that should also be in that same information center. So as in like an encyclopedia tab.
Yeah.
So now you have Aura, which is your ship interface, right? Like so it gives you information about what's going on, who wants to talk to you. It's where you go for missions. It's where you go for like to find out what's going on for exploration. It's where you go to find out about events, whatever. And so once you have this idea of this interface with this character that's ongoing, then other agencies can reach out to you, right? So the Galente Federation could like drop. Maybe I've been playing too much Cyberpunk, but like you could get a freaking phone call, recruiter, a week after that's what it is. So the recruiters all get the information pushed out. So exactly 1 week after you've become an immortal, you start getting spam mail from the various different agencies that are now trying to recruit the newest capsuleer until you start showing what path you're going to be doing, whatever, because that's what you are. You're a new on the market immortal. Like they should treat you as such.
That sounds pretty interesting. But it would be nice to have like a living voice or kind of a figment of a living voice, being a go-between between you and the UK.
I didn't hear you up until just now. Sorry.
Oh yeah, it would be nice to have like a voice kind of being an intermediary between you and the universe coming to ask you to do things. I think it would be really interesting. Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, like now that they've voiced Aura, if they did it in a way that like they could just synthesize more, like they could just do any sort of arbitrary text. If you got to that point, then she could be like, Captain, I have a message for you, and then she could read it. So then you don't actually have to get everything voicemailed or voice acted, but you could theoretically voice act specific characters, to draw attention.
All right, let's have a look at one more thing here. Trigger Happy Fortizar in HD TAC, destroyed by Winter Coalition. That would be Fraternity, with Horde and NC flying over from Delve as backup. So that is interesting. Horde active all over the board, along with NC. Trigger Happy, again, if you look back about 3 weeks ago, we were talking about how Fraternity was moving north to pacify the area because Trigger Happy was active in that area. We're talking about the tribute area. So there's a Fortizar that has gone down. Is there something significant about this one, Gregorian?
It's right on the regional gate to drones.
Okay, in Venal.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Here's a little something. We don't know anything about it, but it is somebody holding a contest for, I'll just bring that up real quick. It's a Proving Ground contest. It's some giveaways and Memorial Stream. Check that out. And all right. let's get to the big story for this episode, and that is a continuation of what we were doing yesterday. And that go
Do
ahead.
we want to talk about the ADM or the DBS?
Oh, patch
So many
notes.
abbreviations. Yeah. Well, there's really only one. Well, there's two important things. The most important thing from today's patch is that now my
Here,
pod,
yeah.
the gold pod, works again, and I can have the Aurum, or I can have the new skin on my gold pod. So that's the most important thing in today's patch, obviously.
Okay, good. Well, now we got that settled. All right.
But the second most important is that since everybody's been super stressed out about how much ratting lowers the dynamic bounty system, what they've said is now that ratting will now impact the dynamic bounty system less effectively, and therefore like the drag down will go slower. I believe that's how I understood it to be.
Oh, here it is. Game system. Okay. Yeah, the dynamic bounty system threshold has been adjusted. Systems will now be more stable and support more ratting without negatively affecting the DBS multiplier. So that means that you will.
So
yeah.
So if you think about it like fishing, right? Like if you let your school of fish be healthy, then you can just fish it all day, right? Well, not all day, but like as long as you fish it enough to keep the population above a certain amount, then you can just keep on fishing it forever and you're perfectly fine. But if you fish more than that, then you're actually going to deplete their population, and eventually you'll get less and less fish because there's less than the actual pool that you're drawing from is getting smaller and smaller. They're no longer able to sustain themselves. You're overfishing your pool. That's what's happening here. So basically, the amount of ratting that it can sustain based on its population has been increased. So, but if you rat past that threshold, then you'll begin to diminish the sustainability of that pool and the value of that system.
So this is good for ratters. They get another break. Remember a few days ago, they got an ESS adjustment, which helped them out. So they are basically twisting the dials and moving it. They're moving it back towards being able to do effective ratting in nullsec because I think when they started, it was too severe. So yeah,
it's clear that they want ratters to be willing to work with this situation, if not be happy with it, right? Like they it's clear that they like this is not like we're taking. Like at this point, they actually care about the parts that hurt and are trying to make it hurt just a little bit less, which is nice. That means that like I said, we're past bedrock. We're now like layering down first level topsoil of our
And I think the object, I think the object of that is to get people out there actually doing it, because probably the brakes came on. It wasn't seen as a valuable thing to do anymore to rat in nullsec. The income wasn't there, and half of it was being taken, and it just created a bad situation. So now, I think they're going to make it less painful to the point where they start to see that people are actually doing it again.
Right.
That's what they're
well, you
for.
also. It's the difference between paper mechanics and perceived behavior, or like within the community, right? So like CCP can run the simulations and see like, okay, well, assuming that there's this amount of ratting, then that'll cause this to happen, and blah 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 blah, and like there's a certain point where they're like, and then we don't know or whatever, but like that's kind of you spec it out in your head, right? But the problem is that like the numbers can say like, a system that's at 95 may be pretty darn good and provide pretty darn good sustainable ratting as far as like what anybody would consider to be pretty good numbers, especially for how AFK ratting usually is. But the perceived notion of the loss, the fact that the difference is being shoved in your face, is causing discomfort to people. And so the idea that my system is below its possibility is causing more of an impact than they would like it to be. So it needs to be able to sustain ratting higher before it begins to be like damaged. Because even if it's damaged by a little bit, people really start to reject it quickly.
Yeah. So what you have is ESS changes that happened a few days ago. You also have some reversals on some things that were rather painful, like eliminating drones that were attacking NPCs, the aggression. So they've been reversing things in the direction of ratters. So you're getting a little more back, and they're looking for that balance. That's what's going on now. But what
I
surprises
wouldn't
me,
call giving the drone revert to be giving back to the ratters, but
you don't think
proceed.
so? Well,
No, because they didn't, and it's still coming for those guys. I'm sure of it, but they didn't want to have the collateral damage, but the intent was there.
I
It was
see what you're saying.
begrudgingly given back from that perspective.
So that's a temporary. Here, have this back until we can nerf it properly.
Yeah, because they don't like high. They don't like low engagement, high reward gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Mining is good for where it's at, but
Yeah.
if all of the different play styles, if there are good quality AFK play styles, people will tend to those over good. The amount of reward that active play styles needs to have to be considered rewarding compared to what AFK play styles can have is monstrous, and will break the game if they give us those rewards. And so they need to reduce the rewards of low activity gameplay, low engagement gameplay, such that which is engaging, that requires a lot of activity by the person working the character, will still be rewarding, right? Like, you can't just make it so that there's more and more value in the abyss, because that's just like a spiraling pain of the same kind of overinflation that we have. Only by lowering what ratting is worth can the abyss be considered valuable.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have. I'm actually going to do a different show on the whole process that CCP is doing now of trying to get the game in some kind of an ecological balance between risk versus reward, and how much money is enough and how much money is not enough for new players and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to go into the economy and all that, but I'm going to do that separately. I haven't decided yet. In the next 2 weeks, it might be prepared material. It won't be a live stream, so that we can actually do some proper looking at how people make money in this game. And I have some ideas about that with some people that I've lined up. We'll talk about scarcity, and more information on that later on. Might be something we do at the beginning of the next year. Okay. Thanks, Ash, for that. So those are the patch notes. Let's go up to, first we'll take on, this is Pro God Legend talking to Test, and he is walking them through, is this it? No. So let's just bring this up here. This is him walking it through their announcements, and this is only about 20 minutes, and we'll again do what we did yesterday and break it down. So this is Pro God Legend talking to Test.
But a little bit of a move today to do, but also we haven't had a war update in a long time. I wouldn't say a long time, a decent amount of time. And this is going to kind of double as our war update / restage for a couple of ships / any other thing we need to do that's housekeeping today. We're going to try and lump it all together. We've actually been looking for an excuse to have a coalition meeting because we want to announce some future plans, but you don't ever want to call a coalition meeting without doing something at the same time. So at least Initiative gave us that excuse, which is pretty nice.
All right, so I'm already going to stop Pro God Legend because he says something that's very interesting that you may not always know. You do not call everybody together if you don't have something to do. So, and I've seen this in nullsec, you basically don't have a big meeting. You don't waste that opportunity to gather everybody without some kind of military goal. So you'll see that with NC. You see that with PL. If they ever have a big meeting, they have something to do, and they're going to go and do it, like defend a Keepstar drop or defend some kind of a factory or something. But they always, take all those people that they gathered, give some announcements, but they take them and they do something with them.
So now that we can actually do something and also announce some future plans, which I'm actually pretty excited about. Okay, so basically goons are down to their last thing that they can reasonably spin about. A couple of weeks ago, they went on this big deal about their doom clock and how our strategy to save iHubs until that we could Sinojam systems in their Keepstars was everything that mattered, and how...
Okay, I'll stop him again. Sorry, stopping so quickly here. We'll get into it and let him go for a while, but I just want to point out the context of what's being said here, and that is, that the Imperium needed to figure out a way to show progress and to motivate their guys towards a goal. So they put up what was called a doom clock. And it's a list of the iHubs that have keep stars in them. And those are the fighting points between these two coalitions. Those iHubs are very important. And they belong to, a lot of them belong to Pappy because they've already taken the system and put their own iHub in it. If that iHub matures to 35 days, then you get to put Cynojammers in and you get to kill the keep star in that system. So the scoreboard is how many days that iHub is before, how old it is before it gets to 0, which is when they can put the Cynojammer up. And that is something that Imperium can look at and say, let's try to keep all these iHubs reset so they can never get there. And then we can show progress by saying, they're not making any progress, we're stalling them, and we're going to wait them out by doing these defensive attacks and taking out their infrastructure. So that's something that ProGod is describing with the Doom Clock.
It was stupid in
Interestingly
how they
enough,
were going to
after he
put up.
mentioned that, the Doom Clock stopped being in the public part of the Goonfleet
Sure,
website, and they started requiring you to log in.
Yeah, I saw that. That is interesting because I went to it and it was no longer public. It used to be a public Doom Clock, but
Public when I sent you the link.
oh, okay, thanks. I didn't know. I thought it was public. I guess it wasn't. So it was a private link, but people could see it. And this is interesting because he's saying the idea that the Imperium had to look at this Doom Clock has backfired. I think that's what he goes on to say. So let's hear.
Everything that mattered and how it was stupid and how they were going to put up this app to track all the iHub timers. I don't know if you guys have seen it. Someone can throw that in the sidebar, the Doom Clock app. And they were going to kill our iHubs before we could Cynojam systems, which was nice because then we just quickly pivoted to holding those iHubs, and for the most part, we've held them. We're going to lose one or two here or there, but for the past few weeks, we've mostly been focused on holding those iHubs while we clear out some other structures and kind of slow the pace down a little bit before we do this big last push. With Goons not being able to really kill our iHubs, they really only have one thing left, and that is their staging 1DQ and their little Helm's Deep pocket of E3OI. They've once again pivoted. Now they don't talk about the Doom Clock that much anymore. A few weeks ago, it was pretty much the most important thing in this war. Now it's kind of another forgotten plan by Matani and them. So yeah, it's an extremely useful app. I mean, we use it all the time. I use it every day almost.
Well, I suspect that's probably why they made it private. And by the way, he's just throwing, basically insulting them because he knows they're going to listen to this as well. But so that's kind of what's going on here.
Salt in the wound.
So yeah, now they're pretty much down to 1DQ and E3OI and Helm's Deep. And we've been steadily killing structures for the last few weeks. We've killed 2 keep stars under Cynojammers so far, 49U and now Hicks. We've got Knoll coming up. And we've also gotten 2 additional keep stars because Goons were kind enough to try to unanchor a couple of them. And obviously that's really difficult to do. And they learned the hard way. So we.
For those that don't know, one of those keep stars was destroyed in a freighter. The other one was actually stolen by NC Dot.
We've been killing structures at a steady pace, and we're going to continue to do so. But probably the 2 toughest remaining battles of the war, among the 2. I don't want to say the 2 toughest because you never know what's coming. But the 2 battles where we will be at our most tactical disadvantage in the war are coming up. And those are eventually going to be the battles to clear out the 1DQ iHub and the E3OI iHub. These Goons have set these systems up with Cynojammers. They've got caps in the system already. It's going to be pretty complex. We took a shot at it last week when it didn't look like Goons were formed up, and we had a form up going. We kind of spur of the moment said, well, hey, if they're not formed, let's just take a shot at it, see what happens, get a gauge of the the situation in there. Goons formed up pretty hard for it, and we were able to pretty easily extract, and now we kind of know what it's going to take to get into 1DQ and E3OI, and
Actually, you can see there how he essentially blows off that they got defeated. So they did a surprise attack in 1DQ and they got repelled pretty well. And that was, I think it was a little bit shocking to Pappy, actually. But he's saying like, we were just testing it. And so, now we know what it takes and we'll get back to it. So he kind of blows that off.
While we're holding our
that
iHubs
goes
up,
back to what we were saying
and getting
before
these doom
about,
clocks
like,
slowly.
the difference between spin and misinformation. Like, he's not denying the facts, but he's dismissing them. There's a difference.
Dismissing them, yeah, very much so.
Ticking down and killing Sodios and killing
Yeah,
faction
I
forts.
don't think it was
I think we
that.
Hold on, guys. Can you not hear the video when I roll it? I don't know if you can. Probably not. Or go ahead, Gregorian, make your point, and then we'll move on.
I think ProGod's right that it wasn't a huge deal because there were a few other timers that later that day and actually try to take the 1DQ iHub we'd have to give up a lot more timers to do that.
Yes, that's actually a good point. Later that day, there was a keep star that needed to be, I believe it was reinforced or put up. I forget. It was something to do with a keep star a few hours later. So if they had gotten locked into a fight in 1DQ, that surprise attack, it could have taken hours and they would have burnt themselves out before they got to the other engagement, which was actually more important. So it's a good point. It wasn't. It was a tactical decision as well. All right, let's hear more from ProGod.
Like 5 or 7 faction forts yesterday alone. Those battles are coming, and they're coming pretty soon. There's not much left to do in Delve other than to assault those fortresses. It's going to be bloody. It's going to be intense. It's going to be a good battle. But it is going to be the situation where we're at our most tactical disadvantage there. So over the next, I don't want to give an exact timeline. I don't want to telegraph our move, but over the next month or two, you can expect some more big battles on the level of the Keep Star drops that we did a couple of months ago. However, they will be different kinds of battles. Those Keep Star drops, I know a lot of you had a lot of fun just fucking nuking goon ships left and right and getting kill marks on your long range dreads and all of your ships, and that was great. But they were a little tedious. I would say these battles are going to be different. They're going to be actual fights, and they are going to be spread out over multiple grids, and probably a little less laggy than the FWST and YZ9 Keep Stars. So I would say they're probably going to be the best big battles that we've had in a while. I mean, every time you get 4,000, 5,000 in local, it's pretty amazing, but it does get a little laggy. These are going to be pretty good, I would say. Better than most. So
I think what he's trying to do here, this is ProGod delicately selling, stick around, the fighting is going to get really good. It won't be a lag fest and stuff. So it's a way of
just trying to simultaneously drumming up interest and also, preparing people for like almost trying to act like the guy on the tarmac before the big battle, suggesting like, if you thought everything else was big, this is the biggest.
Yeah, this will be big, but they'll be painless. They won't be like those big lag fests, but they'll be important and you'll want to be a part of them. And so he's selling participation. This is much like Matani. Matani directly said, you guys got to fight like hell right now. And ProGod saying like, you're really going to like this if you show up. So there's a little difference in style. Here you
go. Because the nodes that 1DQ and E3OI are on are pretty great. We were in there last Monday, and there were 3,000 to 4,000 in local, and it was running extremely smoothly. Not even a 10% tie-dye, and it was almost up to over 3,000, I think. So, those big battles coming up are going to be intense. They're going to be tough. They're going to be bloody, but they're going to be good, I would say, and definitely something to look forward to. In addition to that, goons, like I said, don't have much left, so they're kind of looking for other things to do, and it seems like looking for the door. Anytime your main lead FC is taking his SIG and deploying away from the war and leading 30-man fleets instead of harassing us or doing anything to stop us from burning shit down, you're kind of burned out, and that's basically what happened. Asher's deployed his SIG to catch, in addition to initiative, which you guys know about. And so goons are looking for other ways to kind of fuck with us, to kind of slow us down in any way possible. Initiative has a death clone deployment in Oshit, which is so that they can assault catch. Someone need to take that. And when they did that move op, we went and poked Fountain a little bit, and rather than even attempt to defend Fountain, which is something they spent a lot of time retaking and building the infrastructure back up in, they pinged their guys to move all their assets and NPC stations and abandon Fountain. So they really do not want to be involved with this war anymore. They are looking to take the next step. They've always wanted to go back to Curse. This is something we've known. So they're briefly excited about this. Today we're going to move a staging over there and begin the process of crushing this deployment in its infancy, just like we did when Initiative tried to do their stupid Esoteria deployment. The general thing to take away is that these guys are looking for any out, really, and they are starting to strain a good bit. So
this is some strong narrative that he's spinning here. This is pretty much like they're looking for a way out, the Initiative and the Imperium, but they got to save face, and so that's what you're seeing. It's an effort to save face. There's some strong narrative stuff going on here.
So with the big battles coming up, and goons and Initiative looking for any kind of opening, any spark that they can really get, trying to poke at our edges, this is really the time to redouble our efforts and really push this thing through. It's not going to be over once we take the 1DQI up and E3OI hub. They're still going to have a lot of keep stars. The writing will be on the wall for them, and we do believe that you'll start to see some bleeding after that. Initiative's losing corps at a pretty regular pace now. We think goons will start to do that too once they experience the same hopelessness that Initiative experienced a little while ago. But even once we clear those iHubs, there will still be some stuff to do. But I think we'll be past the most tactically difficult battles once we clear those iHubs up, and we can reasonably say we're in the driver's seat from that point. Still a lot of work to do, but at least we'll be in the driver's seat. And that's kind of what we meant when we say, we really want to push this through, and we're looking at being on the cusp of getting through this war to an extent. So we want to redouble our efforts. I'm going to reiterate what our stance is as far as death clones and jump clones and where ships should be and all that today, both for Legacy and for Test. Test is doing a little bit of a different move up from Legacy today. And, we know it's been a long war. I can say confidently now, all of you who've been here and been involved in this war in any capacity have now participated in the most intense, largest, bloodiest, ruthless war in EVE history. There's been wars that have been slightly longer. There's been wars that have involved pretty much as many alliances or as much of the game, but I don't think there's been anything to this fucking intensity.
He's not wrong. This is the biggest war EVE has ever seen by far, even eclipsing 2018, which was a series of massive wars. Even the Winter versus Legacy war the other year. There has really not been anything at this scale with all the elements that it has. It has the biggest battles. It has the most consequential tactical moves that we've seen, some surprising stuff, but the Keepstar Drop series of fights we've never seen anything like at that scale. I'm going to speed this up a bit just so that we don't linger too long. I'll try not to make him sound funny, but we're going to go at speed and a half. There you go. This pro got a little bit faster.
So it's this is that I was there moment, that Eve talks about. You've all been a part of it. It's not been glamorous at times. There's been great battles. We've dunked goons repeatedly. We've lost sometimes. We've won many times more. But it is, it's been a long war now. And it's going to go on for at least a couple more months. unfortunately or fortunately, but we do have some good battles coming up. We are pretty much in the driver's seat, and once we're past these last 2 tough battles, we'll definitely be in the driver's seat. And I can say with 100% confidence that this will end up being the biggest and most important war in EVE history. It dwarfs everything that I've been a part of, and I've been playing for 11 years, more than that actually. Shit, and it has definitely lived up to the hype here. So being on the winning side of that, having put in the amount of effort we've had, we started out this war holding goons by attacking through regional gates with subcaps into their super fleets so that we could clear initiative out of Fountain while defending all of our own home space from goons incursions, I guess, whatever you want to call it. Then we built a 13 Keepstar chain to go all the way around their space and moved all of our supers and titans through. And we had to anchor 5 Keepstars just to get one down in Delve, and we've killed trillions and trillions of ISK of their stuff. It's been pretty incredible, and it's something.
He's totally correct here. I mean, building the railroad all the way from Catch to Aquarius and Delve is a significant undertaking. It took multiple coalitions to do it, and nothing like that has ever been done. Oh, it's incredible what that allows, if you think about it. Actual safety from your old region to 2-3 regions over. So that is amazing, and he also talks about the fights. He's also going to get into here something that's particularly important. That is the motivation of the fights and how that's going to work out. Here it is.
Something that I sometimes have, sometimes I'll think about some of the stuff we did at the beginning of the war, and it seems like so long ago. It's amazing how much has transpired. And we're starting to get in view of the end of it. And once it's all said and done, you're going to be happy you were part of it. And I think I'm already pretty thrilled with the fact of what we've been able to achieve. So it's time to redouble our efforts, get through these last couple big fights, and then put in the work to get everything else cleared out. There's really not much else to say about that. Like I said, this dynamic really isn't confusing. They've got 2 iHubs left that we need to clear out, and then we need to shit on initiatives, deployment, and catch. And there's really not much else to think about that. I can talk about post-war, though, or at least give you a little bit of a...
Before we go into post-war, he does say something really quickly there, that they're going to take these iHubs, it sounds like first, and then they're going to go and fight initiative. So if you think about that, those are not something you can do really quickly. So there's going to be a few weeks for each of those, but they do intend to go back and fight initiative. They're not going to just let initiative take down the area over there.
Yeah, he sets up that this is like over the course of at least a month or 2.
Yeah.
In scope.
Yeah, it's interesting because there was that question: is Legacy going to do anything about initiative? Killing the smaller alliances there in Catch, and he is saying, yeah, we're going to go back for that territory. He'll say more in a bit. We'll keep going with this is Pro God Legend talking to Legacy and Test.
Preview of it. We had an alliance leadership meeting for Legacy yesterday. We've been having them for the past 2 months, trying to craft what will end up being our post-war stance. It's no secret to say that Legacy is, organizationally, there can be improvements made. Everyone can make improvements. There's definitely some pain points that we've learned about during this war. One of the good things to take away from this war, being the biggest war in EVE history, and will probably be the biggest war in EVE history for a while, is that the lessons we've learned from this war, we can apply them for quite a long time. We didn't know how our organizational structure would strain as this war went on. It was doing great for a while, and it's still doing fine. Everyone, including Goons and Initiative, are starting to strain a little bit from just the length of the war. And the lessons we're learning from this, we'll be able to apply and kind of reorganize Legacy going forward. We're not going to be able to do too much of it during the war, just because any drastic changes now would, kind of pause what we're able to do and kind of, take away from our combat effectiveness for a little bit. But we do have some things we can announce today that are pretty exciting, I think. Legacy will be taking Fountain, Delve Queries, and Period bases while maintaining all of the space that we currently hold. So we will be getting 4 full additional regions. Every single Legacy Alliance will be getting space in Delve, Aquarius, Period bases, and Fountain. We will be divvying it up as a coalition. And our intention there is to build a proper fortress. And if Goons have showed us one thing, it's that it is incredibly difficult to invade Delve, Aquarius, and Period bases as long as you don't fuck it up.
That's funny. So he almost compliments Imperium, but then he takes it away, which I thought was hilarious. We'll listen to that in a second. But he's making a very important point here, and that is that Test and Legacy are going to acquire all that territory, all those 4 regions from Delve to Fountain to Aquarius to Period Basis. That leaves no regions to anybody else as far as this conquering goes. So it shows you that they're the ones getting the prize, if you want the land as prize, and NCPL and Horde and Winter, they're not making any claims on it. So they're motivated differently than Test and Legacy.
But like at the same time, though, it isn't like Test is going to keep all like that's actually the problem that Test ran into when they fought Goons back in like 2015 or whatever it was. 16. They had too much territory, and it would cost them way too much, and they weren't able to extract the value out of it. And so if they were to do that, they would just be setting themselves up for that again. I think that this is more like the warlord taking the whole spoils and then will then divvy it up almost like favors, because you can tell that these power brokers see themselves almost like kingmakers, or like they want to be some sort of like aristocracy of nullsec. Yeah, I guess. Maybe. Who knows? Who knows?
But I think it's interesting that they're going to divide it up among Legacy. There's no mention of like Horde's going to take a bit of this or a bit of that, or we're going to rent this out for some income for NC Dot or any of that. Like there's no financial motive for Horde, Winter, and NCPL. They're motivated by revenge. And that is very interesting.
But I don't foresee Legacy attempting to hold all of this space in long term. So then if they're not going to do that, who is going to get it? That's the real question.
Yeah, I don't think it's practical for Legacy to hold on, but we'll see what if they manage to try it.
Yeah.
Most likely what you would see is what like the Imperium did in the past, which is effectively decide which space is going to be the best for them, put themselves there, and then put effectively meat shields on either side of them as much as they can.
Right. But my point is
allies.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah. My point isn't what are they going to do after they get it? Is it realistic or not? That's beside the actual point. For me, it's about this signals the motivation. Remember, it took Villy saying, okay, I won't fight alongside Imperium. I'll fight alongside you guys against Imperium. And so they're giving all the spoils to him for that. And they're not NCPL and Winter and everybody else. They're not really interested in those spoils because all of their mutual interest is to diminish the capacity of warfare by the Imperium. That's what this whole war is about. It's to take them off the table as a threat. And that's why it's a moot point anyway where people are going to live, because as you'll see in the Q&A session with Villy, where goons decide to try to settle will make a difference as to where and how defended this area becomes, because the main part of the afterwar is to keep the Imperium suppressed as long as possible, to discourage them as long as possible, to keep them in check always. That's not going to take a couple months. We're talking 6 months, a year, 2 years. It depends on the resilience of the Imperium. Okay, so we'll hear a little bit more from Pro God Legend.
Is to build a proper fortress. And if goons have showed us one thing, it's that it is incredibly difficult to invade Delve, Aquarius, and Period Basis as long as you don't fuck it up and do an absolutely stupid defense plan. For those of you who aren't aware, Aquarius is the key to holding Delve and Period Basis, not Delve, obviously. So as long as you actually attempt to defend Aquarius, it's an incredible fortress. It really is. If there's one thing we learned, it's that you cannot reasonably invade Aquarius or Period Basis through the 49U or TCAG gate. So, and you can't really do it through the ZXB Y2 Anno gate either. So there's really only one approach point on those regions. Clearly, with the way CCP is going with the economy and bounty redistribution and all these mechanics, which we've been bitching about, 3 regions is not enough for the entirety of Legacy. 4 with Fountain included. So there's a reason we're not giving up our space. We don't want to give up any space. We took it, we own it. But also we need the space to make sure that everyone has enough writing and mining and all that. We've become pretty adept at dual staging, with jump clone stagings and everything. And we have some plans on how to manage both sides. We'll call it the west side and the east side of that 49U 407 TCAG G Magic divide. We're not going to announce those today specifically because they're still in the works a little bit, and obviously there's still some game mechanics changes between now and the end of the war that CCP will throw on us without warning. But we are pretty confident that we can hold both with dual stagings. It's something we've become pretty good at. And we do intend to create a fortress in Delve Queries and period basis that everybody is has a home in, that we can move most of our most critical and most vulnerable infrastructure into. We're going to want to do most of our super building in Delve Queries and period basis, for example. Preferably all of it, actually, but we can get to that point. We've got what we think is a pretty good plan for the future. We think we've learned the lessons we need to learn from this war to kind of be ahead of the meta, as we always have with Legacy. We've been having a lot of success these last 4 or 5 years. We've pretty much won every war we've been in. Well, we have actually. The only one Tess lost is the one that was before Legacy. We've been, I think, pretty ahead of the curve as far as seeing which direction the game is going and understanding the meta and putting ourselves in a position for success. And I think that's something we're going to continue to do with this plan that we agreed to yesterday as a coalition leadership. And over the next couple of months, we will start shifting towards that. It's pretty. It's just something to look forward to. So yeah, that's pretty much enough talking here. Let's see if we can get.
All right, so then they move out to do the thing that they were going to do, but that's the update from Test. Spoken by Rogod Legend. We're going to do just a little bit more with
This-
Go ahead.
This makes me think that maybe I'm the last person to catch up on this, but this makes me think that what we're seeing here is the reaction of these various entities to things like the dynamic bounty system. So, it used to be that if you have your ADMs high, then you have lots of sites, or like it doesn't take that many systems to maintain quite a few ratters, and you could actually compress people pretty nicely. But if you have to migrate your territory, if you have to rotate your fields in order to get your dynamic bounty system maximized, then rather than continue to move between regions like in some sort of weird locust blue donut thing, instead just move internally and just have 3 times as much space as you need. And rather than renting that space, you now just leave it fallow, so that way it's like conflict space to build up the ADMs or to build up the dynamic bounty, so that way your migrational patterns can come and feed off of it.
Right. Thanks. So, Ash, this is going to be the Q&A part of it that followed. This is held by the other test leader, or FC, Villy. And it's super long. It's an hour and a half. We're not going to do that, but we'll do a few key points at the beginning here, and then we may come back to this if something else is important. So we'll go ahead and start it. I cannot increase the speed here, so we'll just listen to about 10 minutes of this.
So we'll start with Ibn, I guess.
Just
What
take
are
the
our
questions.
plans for all the space we hold once the war's over?
Whew, that's a complex question.
Use it.
Basically, with the dynamic bounty system, it seems like we're going to be in a situation where we want to hold more space than we can realistically hold. Definitely the way in which we hold more space will be different. How we're going to do it all, I can't exactly say, but we're definitely going to focus on making Delve our core region and then working outwards from there. The likelihood is we will not maintain all of the space we currently do. It will either be passed to allies or left fallow. It's hard to say how it's all going to work out, and I honestly don't know the answer because we're still trying to figure it all out. Cat Ale. If I pronounced that right.
So, in the first few months of the war, we were ahead of schedule. Would you say that we've held that, or are we kind of where you expect us to be at this point?
Yeah, we're somewhere on schedule. Wouldn't say we're ahead of schedule anymore. They've put up a good resistance, and their plan is a little confusing at times, but I guess it makes sense. Where they're just determined to stay in 1DQ until they're dead. And so that means things have slowed down a little bit. It's actually kind of worked in our favor in other ways because it's allowing us to take our time. But for the most part, we're not ahead or behind schedule really at this point. We're just chugging along. The original schedule was built on kind of like a 4-phase plan. And, we've basically been sitting in phase 4, which has kind of been, was tentatively named, the big battles, and Phase 5 would be consolidation, and Phase 6 would be occupation, based on the assumption they'd go live in NPC Delve. And we're still kind of hovering between Phase 4, because we had the big battles around NPC Delve, and now we have the two big holdout positions left that we're going to have to assault at some point here. And obviously there'll probably be a third battle around 1DQs, Keep Stars, when we've taken the hype. So there's in reality there's probably 3 big checkpoints towards the full concurrence of Delve before goons possibly run to NPC Delve, which we will see if that happens.
So that's interesting, and that was actually a great question from one of the test guys saying, are we ahead of schedule? Because you remember Fountain resisted very well, but then it kind of collapsed quickly, almost too quickly. They couldn't keep up with how fast it was collapsing. And then the same thing happened with Aquarius and Period Basis as well. There was a ton of resistance, and they were held for a long time, but then Aquarius just collapsed, basically. And I think the priorities were shifted to defend just Delve, right? Everything else, that was where the floodplains came from. Like, we don't care about those losses. Let's back up and just defend Delve. And it's also what ProGod was just alluding to. That's not the way you defend Delve. You defend it in Aquarius. So all that fits together. But they were ahead of schedule for a lot of this war, if there was a schedule. He says, no, it wasn't a schedule. It was more like phases. But the phases have gotten convoluted because of the order of big fights and stuff like that. So he's saying there's still 3 big fights, and he counted off what they were going to be. And he thinks that the Imperium will retreat. They'll be forced to, and he thinks they'll go to NPC Delve. And that may be a really good thing for the for Test and Legacy, because if the Imperium does get defeated, I'm not saying they will, but if they do, and they do retreat to NPC Delve, then Test can actually build their home and be within striking distance of, again, applying pressure to Goon Swarm or the Imperium without having to move. This is a point that ProGod Legend made. If they stick around, great. That's even better for us, because now we don't have to do 2 different areas, where they are and where we are rebuilding. So it's kind of interesting.
It's also interesting that he's throwing that out there at this time, because obviously, game theory, you also know that your enemy is going to hear this. And so he's instilling in his enemy's heads this idea. So it's like, oh, well, is there a pressure to go further? Or more importantly, is he saying this offhandedly as if to influence them to want to go further? Well, or maybe if they don't go further, then they can say, well, you could have gone further away if you wanted to be safer. Your leadership isn't trying to keep you safe. Like, he's setting up various things in the future by having this now.
Right. Well, ProGod made those comments earlier. I'm putting those 2 things together, but what you're saying is well taken. It's a lot of psychology, reverse psychology, and you can probably claim a win on either side. That's what these guys do. Aerith was perfect at that. He'd put out 2 scenarios, and he was going to win on either scenario. So,
what I'm saying is that he's crawling into the head of Imperium's leadership as they're making a decision about what to do, and he's crawling into the head of the Imperium members as time goes on. Because now it's like, well, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Because that is one of the big questions right now, is what would the Imperium do if they let 1DQ fall?
They're not going anywhere. They're in Delve right now to defend it. But after that is who knows?
Right.
If they actually get overrun. Okay, well, let's listen to a little bit more. And then there's a couple of questions that are interesting, and then we'll stop.
We're not ahead of schedule. We're not really behind schedule. We're just kind of... I don't know. The original schedules are gone. So, but I wouldn't say we're in behind schedule by any means or ahead of it. We're just where we are. T-Door.
There's some problems with questions here.
Alliance Freight Service.
At least the next bit. Couple months. Action Forces are in DP basically indefinitely. So DP probably. For...
Sorry, here you go.
Laura and I.
There's some...
All right, Jordan.
Mic problems that they have in their meeting.
Will Alliance Freight Services continue to service DTAC P?
For at least the next bit. Couple months, probably. I don't think there's any anticipated... So, it's just not been a priority.
Skip ahead to...
Dealt last, realistically.
More
basically
interesting
been
stuff.
having a place in the world at the moment. So
Swag surfers.
swag surfers as a doctrine have basically been decommissioned.
He was shouting for or not.
Okay, I'm moving ahead here. Sorry you're hearing all these voices. I'm skipping ahead because they talk about some doctrine, some logistics, and it's not that important to the overall strategy. But they do go back here at the 1156 mark where they talk about goons, where they're going to settle. That's something that we just talked about. So maybe there's an answer here at 1156.
Someone didn't fix the hotkey.
A little bit. I mean, it's
so where goons decide to eventually settle, will that have any impact on where we decide to eventually settle?
A little bit. I mean, it's important to remember, even when the war is done, goons are still going to be a relevant fighting force in the game, and they're going to be a political player. And obviously, we're going to have no shortage of opportunities to fight them in the future, I would hope. So I think it's a safe bet that where they choose to settle will definitely affect our decision-making process, regardless of what we have hoped. You always want to incorporate new information into your plans, kind of thing.
And I guess kind of related to that, the second question is, what's the plan with the perimeter trading tower?
Nothing. It just keeps on going. It's an ISK fountain that pays out, and as long as everybody is getting a cut, everybody leaves it alone. And as soon as we start getting greedy with it and trying to cut out people, the sooner it ends, and everybody stops getting money. It's one of those things where it sucks to be paying somebody who's your enemy or paying out somebody who's your enemy. But realistically, as long as the tower stays neutral and everybody gets their money, we keep getting our money, they keep getting our money, everybody gets the money. That's kind of the way it works.
So a couple interesting points there. The tower is the second interesting one. The first one is he basically doesn't say where he prefers the Imperium end up. That was, again, I was quoting ProGod from before. And it is interesting that he doesn't really want to give that out. I felt like there was a resistance to say what they would prefer. He just kind of says yeah, it'll make a difference. But he didn't want to say what kind of a difference because that would maybe give too much information. Then he goes on to say that the trading tower that they're all a part of is still going to pay out to all the parties that signed the agreement early on. So Goonswarm and the Imperium will get money from that trade tower, just like they've been getting it before.
For now.
For now.
I mean, they've gone back on their word about TTT in the past in various degrees.
The raising of the taxes, according to Villy, I remember interviewing him about this at the time because everybody got mad at him. He said it'll only ever be 3% or something, or 1% or 3%, and it went up to 5%. And people got really upset saying, hey, you said that would never happen. And he said, I had to because I had partners. So Horde and Imperium came in and said, nope, 3% is too low, raise it. And in order to have those partners, he needed to give up that promise that was early on.
So it's always true until it isn't.
True.
If you make those hard political
I'll tell you here.
cuts, then it just creates that kind of a problem.
Just because you're red to someone doesn't mean you can't share some wealth.
People can make, all right, but
I'm skipping here.
The reality of our war effort that wouldn't have had otherwise, right?
He talks a little bit about the wisdom of doing that, and other guys chime in. It just becomes not important. So we'll go to a couple more here.
It's entirely want to break that deal.
Sorry.
We can definitely break that deal, but the decision has been made that we won't, and we're not going to.
Think of it this way: if they're getting paid to leave it the fuck alone, so we don't have to do another high-tech deployment again. That sucked ass last time.
All right, Kilo, mic fixed.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, brilliant. You mentioned earlier that we were going to be carving up and sharing our new space with our allies. Could you elaborate on that a little bit further, as in who's going where? And if you can't, can you let us know if Tess is going to be able to still live and use period basis?
This is the question of the day. Remember, they own space in the south. They're conquering pretty effectively, but it's not over yet. Delve in the tri-region area. The question is, are we going to keep our old space? And that's a tall order. So let's see what he says.
The intent is to, well, I'll be blunt. We don't have a 100% locked down map of who's going where. But I will be blunt. It's entirely possible we won't be in period basis, that our primary and all of our stuff will be focused in Delve. I can't say anything is locked down at this point, but that's entirely possible that we won't have a presence in Imperium bases aside from maybe the odd, keep star to keep people moving through safely, etc.
My bad. He's actually just talking about where legacy alliances will fit in the areas, and he's saying test probably won't be in period basis. I think he does address that though a little bit later. Let's keep going.
Thank you.
Alesis.
Yeah, I was just wondering how Requiem are doing. Have they like fully recovered?
Honestly, the Delve disbanding their alliance probably did more for their alliance identity and to help them than any event in the last 3 years. They've come out of this really strong, actually. And, they took like a 400 bill hit or something, and they lost to Mario Ford. But 400 bill, even for alliances that, goons like to pretend are poor, is not anything insane. And they're doing not only strong, I would say they're actually probably stronger than they've ever historically been, which is kind of a funny irony of the situation, just because it gives some people something to unify around, right? And I think they're doing really well.
Cool.
Could be spin, but I think I've talked to the CEO of Requiem, and he did like the idea that he could have something to rally his troops against. They had a guy who basically turned on them, and they had let him into a sensitive area of the Directors Corp, and he was able to steal about 400 billion on his way out and turn some things over to the enemy of Requiem, which was the Imperium. And in doing so, Billy is saying it allowed them, Requiem, to... Oh, they were also disbanded, so they reformed quickly. They recaptured the stuff that they had lost rather quickly, except the cash and the goods that got taken out. So he's saying that actually raised their morale because now they have a little more fire in them to get revenge, that sort of thing. Okay, there's just one more part here. I'll skip over to 20, and this is about a backstab. Are they... I can't tell if this was like a spy type guy saying, is PL going to backstab us? Because the people in Legacy actually listen to the media. So if you have like the meta show or messaging coming from the Imperium saying, just wait till it's over, NCPL cannot be trusted, they're going to backstab you, it permeates the members of Legacy, doesn't it?
Right, that's just the opposite direction of what I was just saying. Like, you suggest those things out there just in game theory, you're thinking about what your opponent might be thinking. And so you're throwing stuff out there not necessarily because it's true, but because you want to plant that seed that it could be true in the hearts and minds of your enemy.
And this is what, make no mistake that there are multiple reasons. I know that NC said, let me finish the sentence. There are multiple reasons that Mittani is interested in having a media presence. He could very easily do what Gobbins does if he wants to, just sit back in obscurity and just hang out with his people. But he's out front. He does a show he does a very public show. He runs or owns INN. These are instruments of media. Why would you have that in EVE Online? Because there's a couple reasons, and it's not what NC says where he's just making money off it. Like, that may be part of the reason, but I don't think that's the overriding reason. But it is a powerful tool when you're talking about masses of people. So you put out an idea, people are told, if you watch the meta show, they're not really told what's going on. They're told like what to think about it. They're told what to think. And then they go out and keep pushing that. So you'll start seeing it appear everywhere. You can see it in our comments as well. A lot of what our commenters say is an echo of the messaging that's being put out. There may be the reverse.
Well, it's in the name itself, right? The meta show. So it's a discussion about the information.
Yeah.
Which should, the presumption there is that the knowledge of the information exists. What's dangerous is that when you begin to catch like snippets of rhetoric that is built on this meta without understanding the underlying of it, that's when deception can rear its ugly head very quickly.
And it's just a game, right? It's leverage. It's a tug of war. It's pushing, that sort of stuff. So what you'll have is that stuff permeates the other side. So you'll see Imperium guys saying like, are we broke? They keep saying we're broke. Are we broke? And now the Imperium guys have to deal with that false rumor, if it's false, that they don't have enough money to do the war. I'm sure they have enough money. It's an issue of cash flow. I talked to Araya about it today. It makes a lot of sense. We'll get into that another time. But the idea now is that Imperium guys are thinking, are we broke? And on the flip side, the test guys are thinking, are we going to get backstabbed? So the messaging works. And that's why you have a space station or a media station. It's not just to defend yourself against bad publicity, which is originally the reason it was created. Also to improve games writing about EVE Online, which they said was subpar, et cetera, et cetera. It's also to be used as a weapon to pressure not only players, but sometimes the game itself, right? CCP.
I remember when the Matani.com.
You wrote for it. Yeah.
What?
You were.
Yeah, I wrote for the Matani.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was because the Matani.com came out of the Matani getting banned and that whole thing with the CSM and all that stuff. When he came out with the Matani.com, he said that what he realized was that the media had more power in this game than the CSM did. And therefore, he stopped focusing on controlling the CSM and started building a media empire.
If you look at nullsec, they have CSM members in there. They're at the table, and they have the means to rile people up against the company. And you saw it used in 2019 with Blackout. It wasn't just the Imperium. It was also Vili and Test, and it was also Gobbins and Horde. They don't have the media apparatus, but they have the leverage inside and they have leverage outside. And that's how they use those tools to influence the game. They say it's for the better of the game, but
I feel it's important to note that, just to rein this in a little bit, like the CSM are not political activists. They're not even really, they could be theoretically lobbyists, but not in the same way that you think of as lobbyists. They have little real leverage outside of what they can convince CCP them having. In the end, CCP is a game development company, and they're interested in our experiences and making sure that we have the experiences that we're intended to have and all that kind of stuff. And so these kinds of tools like the CSM are very valuable to them, but they've even said multiple times, like, the best thing to do with being a CSM person is to be honest, because if they start to sniff that you're just being political about stuff, then they don't even want to talk to you. That's not actually valuable. Like, to understand that the Imperium want a thing, like, anybody could just check out any of the news articles to find out that that isn't what a CSM member is necessarily there to do, which is why oftentimes CSMs actually advocate for things that are against their best interest.
Right. All right, here we go. We'll finish up right here.
Something we put any real their company is pretty nice because I kind of like it as a
Here it is.
I'm gonna ask, are we prepared for a possible eventual backstab by Pandemic or any of those other guys in Pappy?
No.
Nick points out that
Let me stop that. Go ahead, Ash.
Players and streamers hear the propaganda, and the CCP listens to them, and that's true. But the most important thing goes back to the fact that as game developers, they also have their God's eye view. So they have the metrics, and they have their understanding of what their objectives and goals for us are. Quite frequently, there'll be people complaining or whining about some sort of change, and ultimately that whine or complaint is interpreted by the company as a successful deployment of a patch or a feature, because they were actually trying to make something. Like, what you're complaining about is the very thing that they were trying to do. So all you're doing is showing that it's successful. That being said, obviously CCP does want us to, have a good game, and so the CSM is a very valuable input source for that, and so are streamers.
Right. All right, thanks. So I'm going to back up to listen to that question again. You could tell the guy's nervous, so he's probably not a spy, but he's asking a question he knows is going to be not very welcome. So we'll hear that now.
This before, and I'll say it again. I think this question comes up. No.
Pandemic or any of those other guys in Pappy?
No. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think this question comes up almost every town hall. There's no backstab coming. That's just not how alliances work. Pappy will be here with us together until the end of the war, and if they aren't, we'll take it in the back. There's no ifs, ands about it. I'm not interested in planning for my allies to betray me, kind of thing. That's just not likely, and it's not realistic. So, no, I'm not worried about it at all.
Thanks.
What do you want him to say?
Yeah, that's a message to his allies. I trust you guys. If you put a knife behind, in my back, I'm not going to prepare for that.
That's not even a message. That's just the correct answer. When somebody asks you, "Are you going to betray me?" you say yes. It doesn't matter what the plan is.
Well,
you just
you could say,
"No,
we're prepared."
What scenario
for...
do you go? "Oh, you got me. Oh, shoot, you're right. I was gonna backstab you, but you asked me." That's not no.
You could say, "Look, we're test. We prepare for every kind of situation. That's just what we do. It doesn't mean we expect it." Like there could be a better answer.
He could have said that.
Saying,
so
like,
him saying my back is wide open is even more suspicious, right? Like
that's why I think it's a message. That's why I think it's a message.
Fair enough. Fair. I believe you on that point.
Yeah. All right. Well, this goes on for another hour and 10 minutes, so we're not going to listen to any more of that. And I can't
Please
give it. Yeah, I know it's hard. Well, I love listening to this stuff because it puts me in the mind space of these leaders, which I think are doing incredible work, hard work, stressful work, and very intelligent work. And I get a chance to see where I get a chance to see where they're at. And I always look at the subtext, not what they say, what they don't say, how they say a thing. These are the things that I look for because I'm already up on what they're going to say pretty much. And they
well, next time you prep me that we're going to do an hour and a half long evaluation of something. So that way I can not do my standing position.
Totally. We're done.
This is the daily news.
I did tell you, right? Yeah, that's true. I did tell you it was going to be a long one, but I was expecting to do it myself. I should have let you go earlier.
It's fine.
Yeah.
On the subject of news, though, I did want to bring up. So 'tis the season, and therefore there's a lot of deals, and it just came up on Twitter, and I haven't seen it yet anywhere else. But apparently, until 17th of December, so for the next 2 days, if you buy anything on the Eve merchandise store, like the actual physical merchandise, you also get a raptor, cormorant, caracal, and scorpion steel cardinal skin. So that's that solid steel kind of chrome skin for those 4 ships for free for any. It looks like any purchase on the Eve merch store in the next 2 days.
I was in Tweet Fleet and all kinds of stuff came up. So let's see if I can find it here.
I posted it here. I can in the
I see a lot of
daily
Japanese
channel,
stuff.
or
that's pretty cool.
No, in the podcast channel. In the podcast channel, I posted the actual.
So many windows open and it's buried. I'll find it. Here it is.
I know.
Here it is. You had posted it earlier. Thanks. Okay, and here's what he was just talking about. So that's pretty cool. And it is a season for buying some stuff. So make sure you're checking every day for things in EVE Online. Sales and that sort of thing. There would definitely be something Christmassy and New Year's Eve and all that kind of stuff. Okay.
Yep. And in particular, they love to throw skins into things. So, if you're a collector or whatever, and even if you're not, the secret with these things is that you get this skin and then you don't try to sell it right now. Because right now its value is collapsed because of this sale. Yeah. But if you save it for like a year or so, eventually that's not going to be sold on the market anymore, or you'll just notice that there's a time that it's gone up in value after enough time goes by. It's one of those skins that a lot of people like. It is sold on the Eve store, I think. Mm-hmm. So it'll have a steady value until that is no longer sold on the store, which sometimes they do retire them. But it's one of those things. If you're already thinking about buying something on the merch store, it's a good day to do it.
Interestingly, this event that's going on right now called the Winter Nexus has some stuff that is only offered once, right? Like there's a lot of unique things to get
every day. Yeah, every
right?
day. I actually missed one. I'm very upset. But yeah, every day if you throw a snowball at a NPC, you get one of the 13 Yule lads, or what do they call them now? I don't know if it's Yule clone. I can't remember exactly what they call them. But there's in Iceland they have this tradition of the Yule lads. They bring that into EVE as much as they possibly can, and now they've actually have these like in-game posters. And there's some lore about it from the World News, and we discussed this last Friday which you can still check out the history of that on YouTube if you want to. We Baleful, Dysnomia, myself, and Matterall broke down all of the world news that just came out last Friday, the going-ons in EVE from like a world news, the lore universe side of things, and that was part of that.
Now, I am going to put the fireside chat in chat here for you guys. This is the Matani's fireside chat, so you can check that out. The other ones were given to me privately, and I don't know how public they are. I asked if they were public, and they kind of shrugged, and I'm just not going to give those out. This one I know is public because multiple people give it to me, so
Speaking of firesides, though, on Thursday at 1900 UTC, there's going to be the Yule Fireside Chat, and that's going to be between CCP Burger and CCP Helmar, which is basically like if you want to talk about the guys who make the decisions, that's basically it. If they say something, you might want to believe it was true. I'll put it this way. During the Invasion Tour, during the Eve at Home one, right? Yeah. Hilmar was there, and they were doing a fireside just like we're going to have on Thursday. And during it, they were talking about how they're going to go through this destruction period where they're breaking down stuff and breaking down what was considered to be like the rigid, the once generated world of the universe. And they might be, he even said, maybe even taking stars. So, 8 months later, Poshfin happens. So these are the kinds of conversations that you may want to hang on every single word that these two people say. I know I will be.
So if you're Matterall, if you're talking about the Goonswarm Fireside as I think the usual link that people has all those firesides is technically a leak, but yeah.
Is it? Okay. Maybe I shouldn't have handed that out yet. I'll delete it.
There's almost no way to distribute something that widespread internally without also having it be spread externally.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna delete it here if I can find it. How come I don't have a delete button?
And Horde's Q&A thing is pretty much public as well, so I personally wouldn't see the harm in posting the link, but it's your call.
Yeah, I'll post that. That'll give us some equal opportunities. It's the same.
We're spies for both sides.
Yeah,
that's the definition of a news agency.
So here's the
right?
Horde one from yesterday, and that's a 2.5 hour one with goblins. So you could check that one out too. There you go. So those are the two. The test ones, I think one was on. I checked, and one was private and locked off, so I don't want to give that one out. So yeah, you guys understand. So we're going to raid Trash Talk Tuesday or Carneros. I'll let you guys decide. Put a C for Carneros, put a T for Trash Talk Tuesday. Trash Talk is probably has more war information. I think Carneros is doing a lot of showing people how to play EVE and how to do things.
Yeah. Trash Talk Tuesday today is covering some drama with one of my former courtmates.
Oh, we didn't talk about that, but it's basically the guy that we had on the other day, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna.
I'd rather not say anything further on this show.
All right. Let's go to Carneros. He's with the CCP channel. That's what I've seen, and you guys can find your way wherever you want. Thanks very much, Ashtarothi, Gregorian. Thanks for hanging out. Everybody else, we will see you next time on Talking in Stations.